Hi, everyone. Welcome to AG Triathlon, the podcast dedicated to telling the stories behind top age grouper performances in long distance triathlon. Today, I have with me Matthew, who just won Ironman Texas. Hey, Matthew, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Adam. Thanks so much for having me today.
My pleasure. So, Matthew, you just won Ironman Texas on your debut in 8 hour 23. That is mind-blowing. Congratulations. I would like to hear everything about the race. So how about you kick us off with talking about the swim?
Yeah, absolutely. So it was a really kind of exhilarating race overall. As you said, it was my first ever Ironman. It was my fourth ever triathlon. I had done two 70.3s in one Olympic distance before that, and I've only been doing this for a little under a year now. So to have that kind of a result was really, really phenomenal. And I'm still, we're almost a week out and I'm still very much riding the high from the race. But so to take it from the beginning, so the swim, I swam in college at Princeton University. And so the swim is naturally one of my strongest, parts of the race. And so the focus of the swim was what I should say first is this was my first ever full distance Ironman. And so really there was no expectations. It was just, let's finish the race, hit the race plan and learn for the next one. That was it. And there was no goal time, no placement time, none of that. Very much just kind of, let's see what I can do. And then we'll build from there. And so with that in mind, the swim was very much like, I want to do well, but there was no expectation of get out of the water first or anything like that. So the swim was, effort-based more so than pace-based, which was important because the Texas water was so dirty, I couldn't even see my Garmin when it was out, when my hand was stretched out in front of me. So I started the race about 30 seconds back from like the first group and just kind of the first 5 minutes really just tried to hold back because I have a tendency to go out a little too hard at times. And so really wanted to make sure to conserve the energy. And about 5 minutes in, I started to build it. And probably about 7 or 8 minutes into the race, I was in first and had no intentions of letting up that first place swim after that point. And so kind of got through the swim. About halfway through, I started passing some of the pros, which was fun. The pro women started 10 minutes before, and the pro men started 15 minutes before. So that kind of gave me a little bit of a boost, and it was super fun kind of going through the last about third of the race when you're in the canal. That was a really cool experience, and I have some great videos of some of my support team like walking alongside me as I was swimming and whatnot. So I got out of the swim and, was feeling good. 50 minutes was kind of right around where we had hoped I would be. Not really pushing too hard, very comfortable. And so then it's on to the bike. And so had pretty flawless transition overall. Got on the bike and then disaster almost struck right at the beginning. At one of the first turns, it was like a turn into a bump onto cobblestones, and when I hit that, my front fuel tank, which was a 1.4 liter tank, popped off my bike and split into multiple different pieces on the road. And thankfully, there was a very kind police officer who was kind of manning that corner who helped kind of get the pieces back together, and I put it back on my bike and then thankfully we were onwards. But that was a very stressful moment because that was about 50% of my fluid that I would need for the first half of the bike. And so if that had truly broken, I would have been in for big trouble. And then at that point on the bike, just really started to settle into a rhythm. First 20 miles went really well, not too much wind or anything like that. It was very much an enjoyable ride. And then we get onto the Hardy Toll Road, which was where I was going to spend about the next 80 miles. And the wind was just brutal. I wouldn't say I'm a big guy, but I'm no lightweight, and I was struggling to control the bike. and there was just headwinds and crosswinds like crazy, and I was alone. I was completely alone. I was passing some of the women, passing some of the men, but there was no pack to ride with. Like, it was just me for the first 20 miles into the headwind. And so that was probably one of the more challenging portions of the race, just because mentally it was so early in the race and that headwind was just so strong. But then the tailwind was super nice. I was riding a 55 front chainring, so I was really able to take advantage of that and pulse mass on the way back, which also gave me some good recovery time. And then, I think one of the funny things, like my coach told me leading into this, is that there's always going to be like something, and it's about how do you manage your emotions when things don't go right. And so, at first I had the issue with the fuel cell, and then I come into special needs, and like no one was ready for me. No one was ready for an age grouper to be that fast, and so I was calling out for my bag. And they were like, no, you can't take this until your second lap. And it took a good 15 to 30 seconds of me saying I'm on my second lap before someone finally realized what was going on. And then I got my stuff and was on my way into the second headwind, which was, I guess, a little bit easier than the first time because I knew what to expect, but also more challenging because at that point, a bunch of the age groupers were on the course. And so it was, me going really fast and kind of avoiding the other age groupers and whatnot, avoiding the congestion. And then the tailwind again, which was super fun into the finish of the bike. And again, I get off the bike and super excited that I was right around 4:30. I didn't really know what to expect. I was like, I'll be anywhere between 4:30 and 5:30, And so to be 4:30 was really great, and I was feeling good off the bike. Really felt like I hit my nutrition and my water intake exactly where I needed to be. Get off the bike, same thing happens again. They weren't expecting an age grouper to be as fast as they were, and so instead of someone handing me my bag, I had to go find it myself. And then got into transition and got on the run, and so it's a 3-loop run course. It's about 9 miles, 7 miles approximately, and I was feeling really good. Normally, when I started out a year ago, the run was by far my weakest part, and it's progressed a lot over the winter. I was really, really happy with that, and so the first loop was very comfortable. The Texas course, it was hot. It was hot and humid. I mean, the aid stations are every 1 to 1.5 miles apart, and I was dousing myself in multiple cups of water and ice, and between aid stations I would be almost completely dry. That's kind of what the conditions were like, and thankfully you could find some shade. It wasn't a fully exposed course. There was some shade, which was nice when you got it, but it also, it was still hot and humid, and so really had to kind of make sure to monitor my energy levels, make sure I was getting enough electrolytes, etc. But I was feeling good. I was feeling really good. The first 2 laps I knew that I had a fairly comfortable lead, but I wanted to make sure that I didn't lose it, because in the past I have gotten off the bike with a large gap and then lost it on the run. So that was really kind of in my mind. And then, went through the run. So third lap comes around. I did start to feel it on the third lap, and I think kind of one of my favorite points during the race was about 3 miles to the finish. My coach comes out. He biked out to find me, and we're there, and I asked him, I was like, how much is my lead? He's like, you're 20, 25 minutes up. And I was like, great, I'm just going to hold where I'm at. He's like, no, you have to push more. I was like, what? Are you serious? I'm winning by miles. And he's like, but you're going to go under 8:25. And I was like, okay, fine. So I picked up the pace a little bit, and then kind of, went through kind of the rest of the loop. And there was some confusion about where I did a turnaround going into the finish, which lost me probably another 30 seconds or so. But ultimately figured it out and did the full course as I was supposed to. And went through the chute, and that was really, really exciting to finish so early. It was also kind of weird because no one was there. So that was it. That 8:23, really exciting course. I don't think that I'm so new to this sport. I don't think that I fully understand, I guess, the significance of that number, which I think is great. I think that it can be really valuable to be stupid at times in terms of what's possible or what's good and what's not. But I was super excited that I finished top 10, even among the pros. Even though I didn't get the pack effect or anything like that, I was racing on my own. So I think that's probably what I was the most excited about, was to finish top 10.
Yeah, I mean, I guess to sum up your race in one word, you could probably say unbelievably fast, right? Even for the course, they were not ready for you. So
exactly.
Yeah. And glad to hear that at least on the third lap you got tired, because otherwise I would be a bit worried about what is possible for you. Yeah, man. I mean, look, beyond the race, what I'm still speechless about is you say that you've been in the sport for less than a year, and then you do an Ironman debut in less than 8:25. So yeah, my obviously natural question here is, what is the background of that? How did you get into triathlon? I guess you had some background in sports before, because if not, then I'm gonna hang up my bike. Huh?
Well, yeah, I do have quite the history, I guess, in sport overall. So growing up, my family was very big into multi-sport, like just doing everything. My mom in particular really had a philosophy that we shouldn't specialize too early. So throughout high school, I was a 13-sport varsity athlete at my high school. So I did lacrosse, soccer, swimming, track, and cross country during my high school years. But it was very clear, probably from middle school age, that swimming was always going to be best. And so the swimming was always the priority. I swam year round starting at like 11 or 12 years old, I believe. And I ultimately qualified for the Olympic trials in the 200-meter backstroke in 2016 as an 18-year-old, which was a really, really phenomenal experience. And then that took me to swim at Princeton University for my collegiate career. And while I was at Princeton, as I said, I swam, and I was also a chemistry major and minored in entrepreneurship. So had like quite the academic and athletic workload, which I think is why I'm able to do what I do now, which I'll talk about in a little bit. But so from there, COVID happened, senior year swim season canceled, and it was hard to get into the pool. And so I kind of was like, okay, my athletic career is done. I was going off to med school. I'm now a first-year medical student at The Ohio State University. And I was like, okay, my athletic career is over. I was at peace, I guess. College swimming had been kind of hard. I didn't really compete very well. But I was ready to move on to the next chapter. And then kind of senior fall, when the swim season was canceled, we had a 1-month period of time in January, which I'd never had before. Swimming's a winter sport, and so your winter break is taken up with doing doubles or triples and napping and doing everything that you need to do to train and perform the best you can. And now, because of COVID, that time was completely open. And so I kind of started to think, okay, well, what's something that I've never done before that I've always wanted to do? And because I didn't know the next time that I would have like a month free. And most seniors at Princeton spend that month writing their senior thesis, which is a 50 to 150 page kind of capstone project for your academic career. And to be honest, I didn't really want to do that during that time. I kind of felt like there was a better use. And so kind of on a whim, I think I told my parents in mid-November that I wanted to bike across the United States and raise money for cancer while doing it. And at first they didn't believe me, but thankfully I have the world's best parents, and my dad got behind me, and we set out after Christmas. We set out to San Diego, and on December 30th, I started biking across the country. Had no idea if I'd finish. I actually expected that I probably wouldn't finish because at most I had 23 days to do this ride. And if, I got injured or if there was bad weather, like it could very easily get derailed. And I ended up finishing the ride in 20 days, which included one off day. And so I averaged about 130 miles a day and and had some days up to 160 miles. And I think, I guess it's kind of fitting given the triathlon background. I'd never biked more than like 90 miles before I started that ride. And so then I, finished that, it was a phenomenal experience. I think one that I'll cherish for the rest of my life. And then I got back to school and kind of was looking for something else. One of my teammates had signed up to do a half Ironman at Eagleman 70.3. And I kind of convinced two of my other teammates to do a relay with me. And so we were training for that. And then about, I guess, a couple weeks into being back from the bike trip, I was like, you know what? I think I want to do my own race. And so I signed up for Gulf Coast 70.3 and started training with that. And I, at first, was training on my own. And a couple weeks in, I realized that just getting on the bike or going out for a run and going as hard as I could for an hour and a half probably wasn't the most productive use of time. And so I started, my teammate was training with Andrew Yoder, and so then I started training with him too. And from there, trained. I was planning on only doing Gulf Coast and being done. Like, again, I was going to medical school. I was like, I'm just going to do this one race and then that relay and then be done. And so I didn't have a triathlon bike. I borrowed my teammates. I didn't have an aero helmet or anything like that. And so did the race at Gulf Coast and ended up going 4:05 and finished fourth overall out of 1,400 people. At which point that qualified for me for the World Championships, and Andrew Yoder was very much like, dude, you got to stay in this, like, what, yada, yada, yada. To which my response was, okay, I'll do Worlds, and then I'm going to hang it up after that. And I was like, and most importantly, I want to go on a big road trip with my brother this summer. So kind of trained part-time throughout the summer. We did the best that we could. And then we wanted one race before Worlds. So I went to the Triathlon Olympic Distance Nationals in August, which was a day before I started medical school, of course. And I got fourth overall there, and I won my age group on like 3 weeks of training. And so that was super exciting. And then that led into Worlds, where I finished second in my age group. So at which point it was like, okay, there's clearly something here. It's something I very much enjoy doing. I find triathlon as a stress reliever, even though there's a very strong argument that I don't have 20 hours a week to train while in medical school. I find it's one of the things that brings a lot of joy to my life, and so I feel that it's worth it, and it focuses me on my studies and so I decided to train over the winter, and then Texas was the kickoff for the 2022 season. So that's kind of the long-winded story of how I got to where I am. So yeah.
Well, man, you're just dropping these times and places as if it was normal to achieve these results. I have to say I'm quite jealous myself. But then tell me, how is it training with Andrew Yoder? Clearly, he knows his stuff. And I'm assuming as a swimmer, as you mentioned as well, right? Your running was a bit your weakness. So what did you do to improve upon that to then run a 2:55 marathon in your Ironman debut?
Yeah. So I don't know. I just let him do all the thinking, to be honest. Andrew Yoder has been pretty much the best coach that I could ask for. Ever since I started working with him, I have had probably one of the most challenging schedules I think you could have as an athlete, in terms of just, trying to manage it. Literally every single day of medical school is different. It's not like college where you have Class A on Monday from 2 to 3, and then Class B on Tuesday from 4 to 6 every single day of the week. Every single day is different. And So because of that, we very much have to go week by week in terms of figuring out, okay, how much time can I devote to training this week? How much time can I devote during this week? And, this is when exams are, so we need to, I can't spend as much time on training during this period and whatnot. And so he's been just absolutely phenomenal in terms of managing that load. And I think a huge part of my success has been the fact that he has handled all of that, and I haven't had to think about anything. I just do what he tells me to do, and I tell him, like, here's how much time I have. So he's just been really, really great. He's been really receptive in terms of, like, I will reach out to him if I have questions and whatnot. So I really can't ask for a better coach. And then in terms of, like, specific training, I mean, I think part of it is I don't really know. As I said, I just do what he tells me to. But we definitely focused a lot of the winter on building up my running strength. So we did a lot of kind of hill-based workouts or treadmill incline type workouts, and as well as just kind of building up the leg endurance to do a marathon. But I think the other funny thing is I had never run a marathon before I did an Ironman. Same thing with Gulf Coast. I'd never run a half marathon before I did Gulf Coast, 70.3. So but hey, it's worked. So yeah, the times and whatnot, I guess are even more, like, crazy when you think about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So now that you won Texas and you're qualified for Kona, I hope that you're not going to stop now. So tell us about the rest of the season and just in general, what does your triathlon future look like?
Yeah, so rest of the season is, so I'm finishing my first year of medical school in a week from today. And so then I will have, I guess things never really stop for me. We do have a summer break, but I'll still be, conducting research and working on some other projects. So I won't really have a full summer to, pretend that I'm a pro. So it will still be much more of the same, but we'll certainly be training hard throughout the summer. I have Eagleman on the race schedule, and then Lake Placid as well, and then Kona, and that's really, I mean, it's a semi-full racing schedule, I guess, because school starts up again in August. I would have preferred to do another race in August or early September, but just with medical school, it's a lot to give up a week for a race. So we've decided that it's just best to focus on Kona once Lake Placid's done. So I'm looking forward to that. I think it'll be a really good season. I'm excited for what comes next. Past Kona, I think like the rule book is there is no guidebook. I think, there in terms of being an elite triathlete while in medical school and beyond. So in terms of what things look like after that, it's hard to say. I think my goals are to now stay in the sport for a while, and to stay in the sport for as long as I can and do as well as I can, because I'm very excited about the future. But in terms of a true timeline, I think that's a little bit difficult. It's very much like, I think COVID has kind of taught, like, just focus on the present, focus on the near term, because you never know what the, far ahead is going to bring. So, so I guess my long-term goal is to be in the sport and do as well as I can, but we're really just focusing on one season at a time, especially because medical school just gets harder and more time-consuming and whatnot. And I'm going to make it a priority, but it's hard to predict until you're actually in it.
Yeah, makes sense. And a question, right? Because you're a fast swimmer, so you're obviously very fast in the water, which is one of the most important things when you consider short distance triathlon, right? In the WTS and whatnot. Is that have you given some thought to that, or for now you decided to stay on long course only?
I think we're gonna see. Like it's definitely in consideration, and I think this summer will be a lot of, kind of. This summer is all about figuring out what the potential is what I would say. So, depending on how this summer goes, how Kona goes and whatnot, I think that will influence the decision. But I'm so new to the sport. I don't really think that we know exactly what my biggest strength would be and whatnot. So we're still feeling all that out.
Yeah, clear. Sounds like you're also in good hands with Andrew, so I'm not worried about that. But really glad to hear that once again you're considering the future in the sport. Speaking of the future, right? You mentioned a couple of times that you're a medical student. Tell us about that. So also touch up on what does a day in your life look like. It must be pretty crazy with also the elite level training.
Yeah. So I'm a medical student, and I'm intending to go into some sort of surgery is my goal. Kind of the areas that I'm the most interested in right now are head and neck surgery, orthopedics, and neurosurgery. But I'm really trying to have an open mind, especially this summer, as I explore the different specialties and figure out really what's my true calling, because I think that's just so important. I really want medicine in my career to be a calling more so than just a job, because I think that's really important, and that will also enable me to provide the best possible care to my patients. So that's something that's always on my mind, is balancing the triathlon side of things while also making sure that I'm developing the skills and knowledge and everything that I need to, so that I can provide the absolute best care possible later in my life. And so what does the day look like? It's very atypical, I guess. Most days I get up at 5:45 and we'll do a workout depending on how long it is. I kind of give myself from 6 to 8 a.m. to do a workout during weekdays, and then I'll go to class. And class is like, as I said earlier, it is different every single day. Some days I'm in the clinic. Some days I'm in the OR for a couple hours. Some days I'm in the classroom for multiple hours. And so that really kind of limits kind of exactly how much time I have per day, and also when I do it. So if you were to see the timestamps of when I do my workouts, it is all over the place. Like this morning, for example, we had a quiz at 8 a.m. And so I got up early, studied for the quiz, did the quiz, and then at 9 o'clock I went to the pool and I did my hour swim. And right now we're on kind of more of a recovery week given the race. But if it was a normal training day, I would probably have another hour or 2 hours, kind of some other time whenever I can find the time to do it. So So that's kind of how things look. It's very, very different every day. But most of my time is taken up with training. In addition to school and training, I am doing some research and as well. But it doesn't leave, I guess, very much time for very many other extras. But I think one of the things that has been so great is I live with 3 roommates, and they've been super supportive. So in terms of dealing with my crazy schedule and all the different bikes that I have around the house at this point, and the absurd amount of food that I eat and all that. So, but it's definitely I still have, I would say, I'm very happy socially, which is great. I still find time to do things with friends, but it's definitely not quite as social as I think some of my classmates are, which I'm fine with, because it's also very atypical for a medical student to go to bed at 9 o'clock most nights. So, you got to make some sacrifices, but overall I found it to be very, very manageable. As I said, I swam in college and I was a STEM major, so I'm used to the high academic and athletic workload, and I kind of view this as just a continuation of that. And I'm having a blast doing that. So, yeah.
Yeah, awesome. And do you train with a squad over there, or do you do most of your trainings by yourself?
Oh yeah, that's a great point. No, I train completely alone. Yeah. I think I have a couple classmates that were former swimmers, and so every now and again, I'll try and coordinate a workout with them, and There's like a couple friends in my class that are runners, and if I have an easy run, I'll like let them know. But as I was kind of mentioning, my schedule is so crazy and so kind of all over the place that I found most of the time it's best just to do it on my own. Like coordinating with other people is just a little too challenging at times. So I do a lot of my workouts alone, which I don't mind. I think growing up as a swimmer, you spend a lot of time looking at a black line and in your own head. And so, just being alone or doing things on my own doesn't really bother me that much. There's definitely, ironically, the training that I find the hardest to motivate myself for is the swimming. But the biking and the running, I'm very happy with doing that on my own. Like I have a trainer right behind me, right behind my desk. So that's where I'll do most of my workouts, most of my bike workouts. And then there's a nice running path close to my house, and so I'll use that a lot. And then there's a swimming pool within like a 5-minute bike of my house too. So things are set up to be pretty efficient, which is necessary given kind of how packed my schedule is.
Yeah, definitely. And you mentioned motivation, right? I mean, how do you find that motivation day in, day out? Wake up at 5:45. When the motivation is lacking, what do you tell yourself? How do you get over those darker moments?
Yeah, great question. So, as I mentioned briefly, I did not have a very good swimming career in college for a variety of factors, one of which is that I was diagnosed with sleep apnea in college, and so I really struggled to get sufficient sleep. And so, throughout all the 4 years of swimming in college, I very much had a strong love-hate relationship with the sport, and that every year I felt like I would give it my all and, really truly throw myself into the sport, and then I wouldn't swim fast at the end of the season. I got slower at times, and then junior year, I started to progress back to where I was, and so I was really looking forward to senior year. And then when kind of COVID happened and that was clear that wasn't going to happen, that was pretty crushing to know that I probably would never go a best time again in swimming. And so it took me a really long time to get back into the pool after COVID, probably like a solid 8 months. And then when I started doing triathlon, like part of the issue, I guess, with swimming is that I put a lot of pressure on myself. I really wanted to get better, and I really wanted to go PRs and whatnot, and contribute to the team. And so when I started triathlon, I was very intentional with myself of like, I'm not going to put that pressure on myself. Like, I very much want to do this because it's something I enjoy doing. I love being outside. I love running. I love biking. I love just being outdoors and also pushing myself. And so I kind of have a rule, which I think for the most part I've abided by over the last 12 months, which is if there's more than 2 days in a row where I really dread doing a workout, like I really don't want to do it, then I need to step back and figure out what's wrong, and kind of reevaluate what's going on and what my goals are in the sport and what might be causing those feelings. Because, I mean, at this point, like, everything's optional. I don't have to do triathlon. And so if it's not going to bring me joy, if it's not going to bring me something that I, love doing, there's no point in doing it. And so I think that's really kind of been the foundation for me, is just making sure that what I'm doing is what I love doing. And as I said, for the most part, that's been the case. I love pushing myself and seeing the progress and seeing the improvement and whatnot. And as I said as well, it's very much like a stress relief from the pressures of medical school. And so I do very much cherish those times working out, even though sometimes it's alone, because I just find it's a great opportunity to reset and think about things. And then when I'm done with the workout, like, I'm back in the world. So that's kind of mainly where the motivation is. And I think as well, it's very fun. In swimming, I knew in practice, like, I need to be at this time if I want to go this goal. I need to be at this pace if I want to hit this time. And like, I kind of knew almost too much. And that's part of the reason why I've tried to stay a little dumb in the sport. Like, I try not to really follow too many people. I try not to really focus on times too much or really get like that involved, because I do very much want it to be like just about me and my enjoyment of the sport more so than like these external pressures or external motivations and whatnot. But I do very much think about like my sources of support kind of throughout. So like my parents, my friends, my coach, obviously, in terms of like those people that have helped me out along the way. I've had some people that have generously given me gear and whatnot. So I do want to kind of, I guess, pay it forward with some good results in that regard. But yeah, it's really just focused on enjoying it and having a good time.
Yeah, I think it was really important what you said about, keeping this a hobby, right? Because the moment it becomes a profession, then you lose that optionality around it, right? And sometimes that might also lead you to not enjoy it anymore, and then in the end you just burn out, and then it's all wasted, right? So yeah, I have to say I'm really impressed with your story. Very, very, very happy for you. I wish you all the best. Once again, massive congratulations on your achievements. All the best for university. Of course, that is based on what I understand from what you're telling me, it's the number one priority. And then, of course, in Kona and the rest of the season, I hope to see you excel. Thanks a lot for joining the podcast. It was amazing chatting with you. And yeah, just all the best.
Thanks so much, Adam. I really appreciate it. I had a great time and hope to see you out on the course someday.
Definitely. Talk to you later. Ciao, ciao.